Welcome back to Melanin Minds, uplifting Black women creatives in the comic book and manga space. We have reached our season 2 roundtable talk where I bring all the amazing people who can make it back, and we're just gonna have a really good discussion. Of course, the topic this season was intersectionality, so that's going to be a lot of the focus for us today. And so at the moment, we have Barbara and Ty back with us.
Hello.
And so, of course, I guess you guys can each introduce yourselves real quick in case anyone forgot or wasn't paying attention last on your actual episodes for some reason. Some of us have short-term memory issues, so you know how that is. So, Barbara, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Barbara Brandon Croft, a cartoonist, a newspaper cartoonist. I made the first Black woman to be in the mainstream press. Back in the day, I was syndicated for 14 years, and now, and my dad, I can mention him. My dad was one of the pioneer Black cartoonists, newspaper cartoonists. He had a comic strip called Luther, and now I'm just doing it on my own.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Oh, that was fun.
Hi, I'm Ty. Online, I go by Black and Culture. I am a nerd and otaku culture content creator. I also make edutainment content about nerd and otaku spaces. And recently, I say recently, but I've been in this for a while. I also work as a comic book editor. I also am in the process of just kind of working within the comic book and sequential art industry. I have my own comic book with my dad. And yeah, I do a little bit of everything, but I'm very passionate about sequential art.
Nice.
This is true. And can I just say that, like, both of these women are like the most like relaxing toned people I know. Like, I meant to bring this up to you, Barbara, when we were talking before. I was like, your voice is so relaxing.
That's funny. I like
Very
that.
relaxing. I like it. And of course, Ty, I think I told you, like, you come off very down to earth and just chill. And so I love it. Talking to both of you is always
that's nice. Me ain't nobody got time for all that yelling.
Exactly.
This is true. Well, I do have specific topics I wanted us to cover, but I was eavesdropping on a conversation earlier. I say eavesdropping because it wasn't actually anyone talking. It was through messages. And Ty, you might have seen what I'm talking about because it was in Discord. And it was about the portrayal of Black women in media, namely comics, because it was comic people talking. I didn't see a single woman chime in on the argument, and so it was a bunch of guys against one guy. Okay, you didn't know what I'm talking about. A guy against one guy talking about this topic, and so I'm curious. What are some things we see, or even what are some things we see with how Black women are portrayed in media and comics that are very much stereotyped that we see quite often, especially when we're written by non-Black women? And Barbara, to kind of key you in, the argument was about the fact that a lot of times Black women are written with attitudes.
Yeah, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah. I was curious what the argument was. What was the one guy against the others? What was the one guy saying? What was he saying that?
His argument, of course, was a lot of times Black women are written with attitudes. Everyone was against him. The book in particular he was talking about is a book I enjoy, and because of the character, and I know the creator, and I've read the story and everything about it, I know where it's coming from, I know where it's going, and I know the point. But I still stand by his statement being accurate. So I wanted to hear you guys chime in on that.
That's interesting. I mean, there's a long history of how Black women have been shown in comic form. You know, we're either the mammies. I mean, from way back when, because I can add the historical context. because I'm old. But from way back when we were seen as mammies, and then we were also these hypersexualized beings, and there was, and then we were the angry black woman, and so it's interesting that that's the way we're seen, and I remember at some point going somewhere to talk about my comic strip was all black women, talking about stuff, and somebody in the audience saying, "So how do your women talk? Do they talk jive?" Of course, it was a white woman who asked me that, and I was like, "What exactly is jive?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So she had this idea without seeing the strip, just knowing it was black women, that it was going to be this jive talking woman, which she could not explain what that meant. I said, "Do I talk jive?" I'm like, "You've been here sitting here listening to me talk. Is that what you're talking about?" Because my characters are a reflection of me. And so if that's what you see, and that's not what I'm putting out there, then what is happening here? Is it some preconceived notion of what black women are? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I actually like that you brought up the stereotypes of black people in literature a lot. Just a little to go a little bit deeper into that. I love this conversation. Historically, black people have been portrayed in very specific archetypes. So for black women, it's the mammy, the Jezebel. For black men, there's also things like the Sambo, the Brute, and the Uncle Sam. And a lot of these things have
yes.
I'm very, very interested in this conversation.
I knew you would be.
But these are stereotypes that have historically carried down through minstrelsy into our modern culture. So a lot of these are just preconceived notions, internal anti-blackness that people carry about us. And I think for a lot of Black people, not just non-Black people, but Black people themselves, we carry these things because this is the media that we typically consume. So I think there's this click in us. It's like, oh, Black woman, she's supposed to be this and she's supposed to do that. And when you try to subvert that, I think that people try to box you in. And if you try to use that, because I do think that anger is a unique part of the Black female experience. You can't live in America specifically and not right and not be a little upset and not be pissed off. Like the world we move in is so it's not saying that it wants us to be angry, but I can't imagine you being a Black American woman and not having a little bit of anger in you. So I think there's just a lack of nuance that people have about the people, either the creators who are creating these black female characters may not actually just have the depth to create characters that are fully rounded, or maybe they don't understand what the character is going for. Because if I'm not mistaken, the character that we're talking about is a concrete character, and mind you, I'm very familiar with these characters. The movement is that she is a little brash, she is a little angry, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's cool. You can be an arrogant, rude, mean person, and that doesn't necessarily speak to you being anything less than human. And I think that that's their way of dehumanizing people by saying, oh, she's the angry Black woman, as if we don't have the ability to be angry, or we can't be upset, or it's just a lot of just diminishing us as full people. And that just it really upsets me to think that, of course I was at work, I couldn't participate in this conversation. We're these full people, and it's just like when you box us, when you put this in these archetypes, you just completely dehumanize us, and you remove all the depth from Black women. And that's just it's such a sad sight to see, especially and I was having this conversation in another space as well about how there is always going to be especially when Black women in literature. There's always going to be a debate, in my opinion, that is about how is that person supposed to act. If never there is a conversation to be had about how characters are supposed to act, if there's a Black woman in it, they're going to debate, oh, she's supposed to be angry, she's supposed to be this, she's supposed to be that. And I personally am not, I feel like if it calls for it, the deep analyzation of this character, sure, but sometimes it's not that deep. And I think that with that conversation, probably why I didn't feel the need to uproot my whole day is because it's not that deep. She's just a brash character. She's a superhero. She's I mean, if I had superpowers, right? Like if I had superpowers, wouldn't I feel? I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying, if I were blessed with superpowers, I don't know, I might punch a wall from time to time. It's a cool thing to do. It's a great power to have. And I don't know. I feel a lot of different feelings, but mostly I just feel like it's a moot point to bring up the fact that she's angry and that all Black women in media are angry, because one, that's not true. Two, I just feel like people just don't have the depth to be having these very, very interesting conversations online. And I just wish sometimes perhaps they would read a book, perhaps they call a friend, perhaps they Google.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, I think the idea of Black women being angry, Black people are angry. We should be angry. We know the history. We know what we're going through. We have it. We have it under control. A common phrase that I could hear my dad saying to his friend. He's like, "How you doing? Maintain it." It's just trying to maintain your cool. You're just trying to maintain your cool, because it is under there. Sure, we're angry, but that's not all we are. And can an individual character be soft and kind and then get angry as well? It's like you have to have, if you're going to be fully human, to your point, if you're going to take away, dehumanize us and make us one thing, that's unfortunate, because we're all these things. We are all these things. And I felt fortunate to have different characters that I used with, that I worked with, and I would have certain ones be certain ways, typically anxious or typically pissed off or talk. Oh, so we got.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, all those things. And I like being able to have these Black women talking to each other. And sometimes one is rolling their eyes at the other one, like, you're saying that again. I mean, with a full range, it's like, and sometimes we're really angry.
Yeah.
Too.
I think it goes back to where Ty said at the beginning, nuance. Yeah. Because a lot of times when non-Black women write Black women characters, they do tend to write us with an attitude and angry, and it's one-dimensional. And that ends up being the biggest problem. Is they don't see the different dimensions we have. Of course, we're angry.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those weird things where it's like, I agree with him that a lot of the times Black women are written with an attitude. And then they keep us one-dimensional in that sense. But I also believe that we have to look at the details, because for this character in particular, it made sense. She's not a one-dimensional character. She has many sides to her, and we see all of those things throughout her story. And it's why I actually really like the book. And also the other reason I like the book is because the writer has gotten input from multiple different women in his life. So it's not like he just made this up and was like, yep, this is how it's going to be. No, he did what we keep saying. Get a Black woman and have her be involved in what you're trying to do when you're writing a woman. Like, this is what makes sense.
I agree.
Sarah. Sarah is now here. Yay.
Hi, Sarah.
I apologize.
Welcome.
I'm gonna let you introduce yourself real quick, and then you can jump in. We're talking about there was a conversation earlier about how Black women are often written with an attitude, and so just basically talking about the nuance around that kind of topic.
Yes. Well, I am Sarah A. Macklin. I am a comic book writer and artist, and a prose author. So I recently produced my first graphic novel last year, The Violent Vixens Ride Again. And yeah, with the Black women being written with attitudes, that's the fastest way to get me to not finish a book, to turn off a show, because he's like, yes, we have reasons to be angry, but we're not angry all the time.
All the time.
We have a
All the
range.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you. A complete and utter range. It is a whole rainbow, a whole cornucopia of emotions, and we need far more properties to reflect that.
Mm-hmm. And that is the importance of having Black women in the room.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, I wanted to get that soapbox on there real quick. We're running the original plans, but I felt like it was relative, and we should discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to discuss how seeing different intersections can lend to positive self-image among Black women. So of course, because, we don't get to see we do when we do see Black women, especially not written by Black women, we usually see one trope, not a lot of dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
But when we see that positive portrayal of our intersectionalities, whether that's just Black women or gay Black women or like any of these things, on talk about how that can lend to a positive self-image.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you brought this up. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. Me and my partner, we were watching a YouTube video where it was talking about how, of course, I'm aging myself here. I'm not very old. I'm only,
I'm not
very old. I always like to brief it because of course, my older Black women, they're like, "What you know about that?" It's like, I don't know anything. I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Person in here right now.
I'm a little that young I call her a young lady, but that woman that used to go to church with me, she said, "You a teapot, don't even know what your spout looked like." I was like, I sure don't.
Wow. Never heard that one.
I know. That's how you know from the South. But I know a lot of women, millennial women. One of their icons was from a different world, Whitley. I know that Clara Huxtable. These were women that a lot of women the generation above me really, really looked up to. And as I was watching TV and consuming TV, I realized that there aren't a lot of Black women that I could say confidently that I really look to, because of my specific intersectionality of not just being a Black woman, not just being a dark-skinned Black woman, but being a dark-skinned fat Black woman. And it's it's just, that's just how I appear in this world, and that's okay. But I never saw myself. That was until the Parkers. Meet the Parkers was the first time I ever saw a fat Black, dark-skinned Black woman with her mom that looked just like her. And I was like, oh snap. That's at the time I was like maybe 6 or 7, but that was me. Like that was my lived experience. And now as I've grown up, there have been, I can really only count on my hand so few dark-skinned, chocolate, fat Black women in media. But they are always the sidekick. They're the best friend. They're just very sidelined, which is crazy because in my own life, I'm very much the main character. And I would agree with that. It's almost disheartening because of course there's the intersectionality of fat Black and woman is such a unique intersectionality because of the various type of prejudice you may receive. So of course you're gonna feel some heat from I'm being attacked by a singular fly. I'm so sorry.
I got one that just keeps
just zooming past my face, distracting me. But I have felt the prejudice of being a dark-skinned Black woman before. I felt the prejudice of being a fat girl, and I've never, and then of course everyone in though because of those different intersectionalities tells me how I'm supposed to feel, how I'm supposed to think. I should be grateful that people find me interesting or that people find me worthwhile because of where I sit at. And I think that I also see that in our media, that fat Black women are often put to the sideline, that they should be thankful to be available and visible at all, that it should be grateful that someone even decided to write them into a script. And I can tell when these beautiful fat Black women who are like actresses, like the young lady who's in Glee, when I finally saw her step outside of Glee and do other projects, I was like, yeah, of course, because she's amazing and she's great and she's brilliant and she's a fantastic actress. When I saw these other fat Black women doing great things, I was like, yeah, of course, their weight doesn't hold them back. They can still dance, they can still get it. And it's kind of just, it's a little sad, because I realized that even as much progression as we've made, the prevailing ideal of what a Black woman is supposed to be is still this hyper educated, slim, maybe mid chocolatey, maybe light skinned Black woman. And not to say that that's not a beautiful thing to exist in this world, but out of all the Black women that exist, not every Black woman is highly educated. Not every Black woman has gone to college. Not every Black woman is thin. Not every Black woman is light skinned. And I would love to see in our representation as we continue to diversify our stories, I would love to see more diversity in the types of Black women that we decide to put in our stories. And I definitely see that in indie works. I will say indie comics. Indie comics always got me. I'm always going to find me a chunky Black girl. And some of our mainstream media, I would definitely love to see us diversify the type of Black women that we have, because it really is so important. And that's honestly kind of what makes me make sure that I, despite me not initially wanting to, but it makes me want to show my face more. It makes me want to get out there and show that I exist, because I am in fact that dark-skinned chunky Black girl. I'm kind of educated, I maybe went to college or whatever, community, but I went. I went, people like me. And I think it's just important that I show up and I exist and I am there, because I just feel like there just needs, because there's just more than just me that exists. There's tons of women and girls that look like me, but they just need to know that I'm there. And I feel like I really, really wish there was more of me out there doing the things that I'm doing. And people notice it and called it out, that kind of stuff.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to just talk as the old person here, who, growing up, there were no Black women that I could see. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. I'm like, the first Black woman on TV that I can recall was Julia. Diane Carroll. She was the nurse. And she was also the sidekick to the doctor. But it was her show, and she had a kid. And she was single mom. It's interesting to go back and see how things were brought into my experience in seeing us in the media. So I mean, and we had Eartha Kitt, who was Catwoman on Batman. I was like, oh, there's somebody with some color there. We had Malibu Barbie. I'm like, oh, Barbie's got a tan. It's like, so it was just that kind of thing. But as far as the comics went, it was like when Charles Schultz put Franklin in, I was like, big news. And it's still big news, apparently, that you finally saw something that reflected who you were. And, I talked about this before, but it's that when you're not seen, when you aren't there, you are just resigned to being other. It's like, I am not part of what the rest of the world is doing. Everything else is normal, and I am other. And we've come a long way for sure. But you're so right in saying that we need to see the whole range of Black women, and we need to see Black characters written and drawn by Black hands. That you can feel that authentic voice coming from them. So yeah, it's just a different experience that I've had growing up, and in my world, it's it was all white. Everything was white. Everything was white, and that's just the way it was. Luckily, I had to, my dad was, one of the pioneer black cartoonists, putting black characters on the page. They were kids, and but I grew up with a certain knowingness about what the world was about, and what he did very much informed how I became, a person. So I just want to throw that in. Sorry.
Well, I guess I'm gonna speak for the middle-aged people. But for me growing up, I did not have a lot of black friends I was really close to outside of like church. But even with those kids, I was still kind of an outlier. I was the oldest. I like to read like fantasy and science fiction. So while they were all carrying on, I was like sitting in a seat at the bus with my issue of fantasy and science fiction magazine, not talking to anybody. Or like I'd be the one getting my homework done on the bus, not because I was so studious, but because I wanted to go play video games when I got home. But so it's like for me, when Living Single came out, it was the friend group I wanted and hoped I would find once I like went to college and was free and got to be around more people of more like mind to me. And in them all I found aspects of either what I was or what I wanted to be. Yeah. And there were two fine guys. So it's like, to see a black woman who was owning her own business, and it wasn't like, it was something creative. She was owning a music magazine. To see Max, who was a lawyer, but she was just crazy as all get out. Even Sinclair, who kind of had my sense of humor at the time. And I knew I could be just as airheaded as her when I just didn't feel like thinking. So it's like, I want to see more like that in comics. Yes. And we're starting to get there, particularly, like we said with indie, but it's like mainstream. I want them to get there. I so want them to get there. Yeah. And I guess we just got to keep on pushing.
Keep on pushing. Yeah. I just, I feel like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm just going to let you guys know that, when in the 89, when I first got in Detroit Free Press, I had this cast of black women, talking. And then I got syndicated in 1991. And Hollywood did come calling. And I did have meetings and all that to do a show. We did talk about something very similar to what ended up being the show you're talking about. I'm not saying anything. I'm not suing anybody. I'm just saying more and more was like all in my stuff. And I was living in Brooklyn. I had I had two roommates and another girl and two other women in the building, Brooklyn, Brownstone. They were like, oh, so much of it was stuff that we talked about. Didn't happen. It happened for me. Mm-hmm. It does make me feel like it was good enough to be that. You know what I mean? That the idea itself was good enough. I mean, if I was living in Large now, I'd be very happy. I'm not. I had my time in the sun with having authentic black women talking and to each other, and it got the attention of Hollywood to make something happen. I was a hillbilly. I didn't understand. Like, I come out there and I was like, the guy went to take my bag and I shook his hand. He's like, I was going for your bag. I was like, oh, I was like, I didn't know. I was like, what's happening here? I didn't get it. But what you have to be is you have to know stuff. You have to know more and be open to it and not so afraid and all those things that I was and still am to some degree. That's just my nature. But yeah, and I just I felt So my very first book that the Syndicate put out was a yellow soft-covered book, and Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis wrote the foreword for it, and they said something about that my script should be in a time capsule, so people can, years from now understand what Black women were going through. It's like that's like so. That just melts my heart. To think that I was able to show a range of women, and some of them had attitude, some of them didn't, some of them were dealing with this, some of them weren't. All of them were friends. They didn't have to be the same. Just like you're saying, you saw those women up there. You're like, I would hang out with them. It's like that's the way. That's what you want to be able to put out there. So I just had to throw that in because as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, I don't want to sound like they're angry. But
I understand.
So desperately. As I've been doing the work that I've been doing, like connecting with people in the comic book and manga industry, I wish that we had some kind of detailed like list of our specific aspect of history. Like a lot of during Black History Month, I was doing a series on just different aspects of our history and comics, researching the all Negro comics and then going back and trying to find where we are. And there really isn't a detailed history, like a book that we can go to, or even like a consolidated website. I know that there's one website, I believe it's called Black Comic Lords or something like that. I know that they're detailing a lot of different Black comic books and indie books, but a lot of them don't have our history. And I end up and I'm so thankful to you, Tashi, for doing this, because the more and more I watch you work and the more I watch my peers work, I realize that there is really a need for us to be documenting the women in this industry, because we're just Black men. No disrespect to my brothers, I'm here for you. I want you to succeed, truthfully. But like, where's my mothers? Where are my sisters? Where are my aunties? Where are my non-men? Like, where's our lineage? Where is that documented, so I can look back and go, oh, so I know that Stephanie Williams, who's the writer of Niobe, I know she's there. I know she exists, because prior to me going and visiting her in person, had no idea that she exists. Not to say I hadn't read her work, because the crazy part is I had read her work. I just didn't know it was her. And as you've come on, I realized the book that you wrote, I read 2 weeks ago. I've already read your work, but I didn't know it was you. I made no connection. I had no connection. You're not saying, I'm nobody special. I don't need to know who you are. What. I don't need your phone number. But like, I just something to document, to say that we're here, we exist, that these people are there. And there's nothing like that exists in any, meaningful way that I feel that I have seen, or I would love for our people to connect with. And I just feel like that's definitely, I don't know, that might be something I just have to take on. I realize if I don't see it, I might just have to do it myself, and that's okay.
You beat me by like 5 seconds.
I was like, if I don't see it, I would do it.
You gotta do it.
Because I realized that I wouldn't call it an oversight, but there's this place missing where our stories aren't being documented. Our work isn't being cataloged, and that's so necessary, because when speaking candidly, when white folks are like, oh, well, what have you done recently? I can say like, oh, well, you ain't know my auntie wrote this, don't you know? My sister right here, my big sis right here. Oh, she wrote that. Like, I just gotta, because I gotta plug the family. Like, I can't be out here not showing off who's around me. Oh, you Tashi? Don't you know that's big sis? Tashi wrote this. Tashi and family. And it's so important to me. We really, somebody gonna have to get on that. I guess I gotta write that down.
All right, we're taking notes. This is a new project for us to do now. Because, like you said, Black Comic Lords, they're doing, I think currently it's like a documentary on Black comic collectors specifically that they're doing. They're traveling the country, and I have seen all men.
Mm-hmm.
All men. And then even there is a book. I had the name in my head like a little bit ago, and then I completely lost it. But it's a book on the history of Black comic characters and creators. Mostly touches on like Milestone and all Negro comics, and it's mostly talking about the men that were involved, of course. And again, that's not to put a damper on what they've done because they've done a lot, but we're always missing in the equation somewhere.
Yeah.
Every time.
I
And
can't
it's like,
remember
how do
my,
you continue to
my guy's
overlook that?
name. He did a book. I mean, we
Mhm.
actually tried to work on a book together because that actually was my idea to try to do something like that. You know, I don't know enough about comic book art and
Mhm.
comics in that way, but I had this sense of maybe doing something about newspaper comic strip artists and Stephen, what's his name? I don't know. But he ended up we were working on it together for a minute, and then he lost his job. I still had a job. He had the time. He put it out, and you know, all is well and all is good. And also, what's her name? Has the comic encyclopedia. But it's not put in context. What I liked about the idea was what I was trying to hope that we could have done was to talk about what was going on in the world and why it was so important for these Black characters and these Black artists at this time. So it was like doing it through the decades, because each decade I wanted to be able to say that how many lynchings were during that year, you know, during that decade, during this is why we were coming from where we're coming from, why we have this angst, and why we, you know, are just trying to maintain all the time. We're trying to maintain our cool so we don't explode. You know, we're like, and shame on you, white folks. You know, it's like you should know this stuff. You know, it's you know, it would be something to. It would behoove you to know this history. You know, it would behoove them to know this history. Yeah. I couldn't come up with one name or one title of one book while I was saying that. Sorry.
You weren't the only one.
No,
I'm still sitting here trying to figure it out, and I can't remember right now. And I think it's a documentary on
Black women in sequence. Oh,
Look at that.
Okay, that's cool. I like
okay.
that. I need to look that up.
You got one?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm happier than a pig in slop right now.
No, I think that's amazing that that just the one even exists.
Right.
Yeah.
What I think that I know, of course, you know, I'm a kid of the internet, so I'm always like, I want a database. I want like how Marvel has it, where you go in and you type in someone's name and pop, there's their information, their biography, all their books. But that's just because, you know, I'm extra and I like
I like that because not everybody wants to pick up a book sometimes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Exactly.
And also I love how you had said where like what's happening at the time, like how many lynchings, what protests were happening, what was going on socioeconomically. I think that's also
what was
right
at that time. Yes.
Like that's so important as well, because like thinking about the last 5 years, like how many, like the big boom of Black indie comics. So main reason why that happened was because of the George Floyd protests and this hyper visibility that Black creatives had on them in all different industries. And now everybody wants to, you know, be Black power for a moment. And I think that's an important.
Because back in the 60s, that's when I was around, you know, when the cities were on fire, you know, and they were like, we got to get some Black comics in here. That's how my dad got in there. They put the focus on you when things are getting hot, you know, they're like, wait a minute, we got to make sure the Black folks are okay. And they wanted their papers to reflect their readership, because we were reading and buying the ding dangs, you know, try not to curse, the newspapers, and we were part of their readership, you know. And so they had this kind of, they thought that would be a way to appease us, you know. So just like you're saying, so now again, they got after the George Floyd monstrosity, they wanted to again put us back in focus and
Mm-hmm.
let us think that we mattered in some way or another, you know.
Man.
It's just a very interesting way. I mean, you get a different perspective when you're you know, I don't want to sound like Grandma Moses, but when you do get a different perspective when you've lived that, you know, you've lived that, you've seen it, how it goes and how it's you know, in and out of vogue, you know.
Yeah.
That's the way it has been so far. Who knows what's going to happen next with
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the
Yes.
conversation I was having with someone the other day. I was about to say who it was, but I'm not going to say that yet because it was actually during recording for season 3 of Melanin Minds. I'm not releasing who all is part of that just yet. But we were talking about how it's always this big in mainstream, this big boom of Black comics and Black media whenever something happens. And then once the drama and the extra has started to die down, then they're like, okay, I think we've placated them enough.
Yep.
We don't have to do this. We don't have to do this anymore.
Mhm.
We can go back to the usual. Okay. We don't
Yeah.
have to keep spotlighting them.
Yep.
And so that's why I was like, indie is important. Indie media is important so that we can
Absolutely.
continue to keep us at the forefront and sharing the spotlight so that we don't have to keep seeing this dip every time there are no longer social issues going on, or at least they're no longer at the forefront. So we were just talking about that last week.
That's something else. I'm sorry. I'm shaking my head just because it was once you mentioned it, I realized I was like, yes, that is exactly what happens every time there is some kind of great schism. You know, they're like, let's open the floodgates. We need some melanin in here. What you got a story? I wanna greenlight your story. You've got a pathway. Let's get it out there. And then we're seeing it now, and once we have achieved equality. You know, once racism has ended, once everyone's happy for a while, once everyone's good. Oh, you know, the Black folks, there's enough Black people in the room. You know, we're just gonna. You guys got it right.
Thing is over.
Slavery ended.
I can go now.
And it's honestly, I would say it's disheartening if not we had the oral history and the physical history to just show the lineage, and we've just seen it happen over and over again. And I think not to be necessarily I don't want to sound fatalistic about it, as if, you know, like there's no way of changing it, but I don't think that in the current way that media is being distributed, in the way that we consume media now, that there is a way to circumvent this issue. Unfortunately, I think this is just like a symptom of racism, late stage capitalism, whatever, you know, what all the isms and what it is that is the country that we live in. However, I think something that might happen is building a stronger support system internally. You know, I've noticed over a large portion of this time that a lot of creators do get a big shout out, but I personally haven't seen as many women get shouted out, specifically Black women get shouted out during these moments. And I would love that as we're building this infrastructure, because I know that's what everyone's always talking about. How do we support each other? How do we share people around? I would love to see more of us get shared around, because there's so much more of us in this industry, than anybody is really saying. And it almost makes us look like we are this little tiny pocket. And I mean, you know, statistically we are a small group, but I think that we represent so much more of sequential art, you know, not just traditional comics, but also like actual cartoons and other parts of sequential art. We represent so much more of this industry than what people are saying. And that's a little, it makes me a little salty. Not gonna hold you. I'm a little salty about it.
I think even the statistics, the percentage numbers are low because that's only who is recognized. Who's out there not being recognized? It's not being counted in that percentage.
That's right.
That is fair. Yes.
No, you go.
I was going to say, obviously, because reading comics is what brought me to making comics, and with women being the dominant comic buyers in this country, which with the introduction of manga, that's been proven year after year. So
Mhm.
there cannot possibly be a small number of Black women making comics if we
Right.
out there reading them all.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just statistically impossible.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
like we just got to shine the light and get the flashlight out and go out there and be like Pokemon,
Find
try
them.
to get them all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right.
I was gonna say, speaking of sharing each other, I think we've come to a good point where we can go ahead and everyone share their socials as we start to close it out. Is even though this conversation is so good, it could probably go for like another hour at this point. But we will go backwards. This, which I guess it's kind of backwards. But Sarah wasn't here, so starting there and then go around. So starting with Sarah and whipping around to Ty and then Barbara. Give the socials.
Okay, so you can find me on Blue Sky and Twitter or whatever it's called now, as Killian Fantasy, KILLIN, no, IAN Fantasy. I'm on Instagram as Sarah_Macklin, and you'll never find me on Facebook because I was only accept different requests.
She does have a website and a Ko-Fi.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Website is sarahamacklin.com. Yeah, and Sarah Macklin on Ko-Fi.
Okay. Love that. Just putting that into my
I'm
putting
used
that
to
into my browser.
While they're doing
Just-
that, is it Ko-Fi or is it Ko-fi? Like I never know.
I call it Ko-fi. But I get why people would call it Ko-fi though.
I call it coffee because I am Southern and I am getting in my middle age and I refuse.
I keep hearing
Coffee,
Ko-Fi,
yeah.
but I was like, everybody's always like, buy me a coffee. So I was like, is it supposed to be Ko-fi? But everybody I know keeps calling it Ko-Fi. And so I'm just confused.
No, I've been calling it coffee for a while, or I call it Ko-fi. But at this point, people, when they make their fancy businesses, they should have a phonetic little audio button next to it so I can press it and hear what the business sounds like. Because other than that, your business is gonna be whatever I call it when I call it out. But yeah, my name is Ty. I am Black in Culture everywhere. That is BLAQUE, the letter N, KULTURE on all platforms, even Facebook, which I don't go on. I also have my own website, the same thing, blackandculture.com. And I have my press company, that's B&K on Tour. All of that's on my website. That's where you can find me. That's where me and my team will be. Yeah, that's it. I just be out here.
I actually don't know. I don't know what coffee.
Oh,
I don't know what that is.
No, you're good. It's a
how do we explain it?
Yeah, so basically it's a platform in which you can, kind of like how a website works. It's a separate website where you can put all of your folks into one place and they can actually pay you to, for specific services, kind of like Patreon, if you ever heard that. It's basically just a subscription based.
Is that like that?
Yeah. Yes. So it's
more like
Substack.
It's actually more like Substack. It's
More
a
like
subscription based site.
Yeah.
You can have a free tier for people can just enjoy your content, or you can have a subscriber tier where people can pay at a certain level, or there's a tipping feature where people can just tip you a certain amount.
Oh, nice.
And you can have a shop.
And yeah, right. And
you can have a shop.
Sarah's shop is on hers.
Oh my!
You can have a shop.
Yeah, I'm learning. I learn something new every day. I like that. Thank you, ladies. I learned about Substack when I went to Nigeria. What? I met these Nigerian cartoonists, and they're like, "Yeah, you gotta go on Substack." I was like, "What?" So
to be fair, I learned about Substack like late last year myself.
Okay. Yeah. So my stuff is it's under my name. It's Barbara Brandon Croft all together .com is the website. or Barbara Brandon Croft. I'm on Instagram, and I have a little blue check that says it's really me, because there have been some folks out there saying they're me. I was like, that's not me. So I have a little blue check on my Instagram, and then I am also on Facebook. But I'm old. That just goes to show you. That's how I keep in touch with all my high school people. And tell people, oh, we had our anniversary. You tell all those kinds of things. But I also post my strip, because I'm not getting paid anymore. I just do it because it's killing me not to do it. It's like I have something, so I put it out there. So that's where you find me, under my name. Not clever at all. Barbara Brandon Croft.
Perfect. It's simple.
It's beautiful.
That's what we need.
It's beautiful.
It's easy to find stuff.
Oh, that's too funny.
And of course, she's not getting paid by syndication anymore, but I said it before. She has a whole book.
There's a whole book
filled with her strips that you can buy, and it is Eisner nominated now.
It is.
So make sure you pick that book up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, also Sarah has all her stuff on her Ko-fi, coffee, whatever it's called. She has a shop on there where you can pick up her comics. They're really cool. They're really fun. I enjoy them. And of course, Black and Culture, B&K on tour. Support it so she can get to more conventions.
Yes.
So we
I want to get paid.
All over the
pay
place.
A Black woman.
Exactly. Paid to be at these conventions.
Pay a Black woman. More. Pay every Black woman here. We need money. You love us? Put money in our bank accounts. Cash App, Zelle us, PayPal. Buy our books. You love me?
I'm going to put everybody's Cash App in the description.
Black History Month coming back up. Don't you Cash App me some money?
So support all these beautiful women because they're doing awesome things. And so now this would be where I would put the creative challenge stuff. After that, we have our little fact that I had to rewrite because I accidentally deleted it the other week. And so now it's not worded the way I wanted it to be. But Luna is among the few romance comics to feature a superpowered Black woman in a main role in a healthy and thriving relationship, and is written by Carla Madrano of Concrete Comics.
Ooh,
so if you haven't checked out Luna, issue 2 just got sent out for the Kickstarter, which means it's also now available on the website. So you might want to get yours before it sells out. I'm just saying, they sell out a lot. That is everything. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait, me. Duh. You can find us at midnightcomics.org, or you can find us everywhere as Midnight X Comics, except for Facebook and YouTube, where we're just Midnight Comics. If you're looking for me specifically, you can find me at official_TOSHIJ everywhere except for Facebook and YouTube, where I am just Tashi J 89, and I don't have a website right now because Thank you guys for tuning in for the season 2 roundtable. I really enjoyed this conversation. I actually had one more topic I was thinking of doing, but it wasn't needed because this was good enough. This was so good, and I thank every one of you ladies for being here and talking to me, and just you guys are all great. Support them, please. Or I could threaten you instead. But anyway, thank you for tuning in to Melanin Minds, and I will see everybody for season 3. That's it.
Yay!